Hello guys, my name is Matt from paintacademy.com and today I will show you how to airbrush Warhammer vehicles. Okay, so just to start, I have my repulsor mostly assembled. I left a few various parts separate, and I have my turret also separate just for easy access to the hull. So yeah, the parts I want to paint in different color, I decide to just leave unassembled, and I have the main hull, so main green part here just to airbrush it. Most of the time I want to have as much elements on the model assembled before painting as possible, but in this case the possibility of airbrushing them separately is really worth the effort, so I decide to go with that option. Okay, so I will need 3 paints to do that paint job, and my main color is olive green, but you can switch it for any other paint. And other than that, I will need some kind of black and some kind of white. I'm using this one because it's easier for the airbrush. And usually I'm starting with a black primer on the model, but in this case I decide to add a little bit of olive green to my primer. So the model is already sprayed with mix of black and olive green. So yeah, that's my starting point. Okay, so I will need to mix some paint for the first green layer, and I decide to add a little bit of black to the mix, just to tone down the color, because I thought it will be a little bit too saturated. But in the end I think it was unnecessary, mostly because it's easier to recreate a color scheme in the future when you're using the colors as they are straight from the pot. So the less mixing you do, it easier it is for you to recreate this paint job for the future models in the army. So yeah, so I don't really know if the effect was really worth it, but it probably doesn't matter in the end. Obviously I'm also thinning the paint because I want to have as much control over the stream as possible. I don't want it to be too thin, but I'm also wanting to avoid these little dots you are getting when you are spraying with too thick paint. Yeah, so I can start my airbrushing. Okay, so main goal for this phase is to sketch the whole highlighting scheme for the model. And in the case of vehicles, the Zenithal highlighting does not work that well, so I need to do another method. And the main idea is that highlights of each section of the armor shouldn't meet with highlights of another section. So I want to keep the nice separation between all these sections of the armor. It's hard to explain, so I think it's the best when I just show it. Okay, so I want to use the geometry of the model to keep highlighting one section when leaving the another section, so in this case the side of the tank, completely untouched by paint. It's a little bit tricky, and it requires some practice, but you don't really need to get it right 100% of the time to keep this effect, so just try to do the best job. Of course, it's easier to do that on the main sections of the armor, so in this case between the top and the side of the model. On the smaller parts it's harder, but as I said, if you get this effect most of the time, this will be more than you need. Also, I'm using a little bit more diluted paint than I should, so you can see that it tends to pulse in some spots, and it dries quite slowly. So I'm just proceeding to the another part of the model, and I will try to leave it as it is and just go back when it's dry and do another second layer on that. So if you see that you have pretty thin paint, just do more layers and don't try to get this whole effect at once. It's usually the good idea to do more thin layers than one thick layer, even when airbrushing. And probably just after the second round you will see the full effect of the color difference and the contrast between the armor sections. Yeah, and that's pretty much all for this first green layer. The second phase or the second layer will just drive the contrast even further. So just be diligent about where you are putting your paint and keeping the angles right, because it's way easier to use these natural angles of the model than trying to spray straight lines. I think it's pretty obvious when I'm saying it, but it took me some time to even think about it, so I will try to say all the details, even the obvious ones. And some people think you need to use masking for that, and you could, but it would be way more work than just doing the best you can without it when it's possible, and ignoring the rest, the troublesome parts. Now it's pretty hard to see the point I'm making, I guess, but it will be easier when I start to paint the side of the tank, because the top is pretty flat. You want to leave the edges with the dark shade of green, just for keeping the shadows, but it will be the mostly visible when I start highlighting the side of the model. Okay, so on the side I have like the main angle and this small line between the top and the main part of armor on the side. So I want to leave it mostly dark at the moment. And again, I'm spraying from such angle that I'm just leaving it completely untouched by paint, and it will be my line of separation between those two parts, the top and the side. And I'm highlighting the top part of the whole side, so I want to make like the gradient between the bottom part and the top part. I want to keep the contrast really strong, so in the end this bottom part should stay almost black. In my case, black with a little bit of olive green, but yeah, that doesn't change very much in the final effect. And on the other side I will do just the same thing. I want to keep the both sides similar. And if it's your first time spraying vehicle with airbrush and you don't feel like you have a lot of control over stream of paint, those 3 sections would be your main goal to get right. So the top one, the right side and the left side, and you could call it a day, and it would probably be fine to just finish rest of the model with regular brush. But using the regular brush adds a lot of time to your painting, so if you feel confident, I will encourage you to use as much airbrush as possible. Okay, so just to speed things up a little bit, I'm doing the turret, and this is the same principle, same way of highlighting. I want to create as much contrast as possible between the top and the sides of the turret. So yeah, that's really the same thing. The main detail is that I want to create this contrast between the top and the side, and the side panels, each side panel to another one. So I'm not spraying necessarily the bottom of each side, but in the corner. So I'm creating this contrast in the opposite corner. I hope it makes sense. I hope you will get this right, and when you get this whole sketch right, the whole another phase is just walk in the park. So this is the part when you need to focus the most and you need to get the best job possible. But this sketch and this first layer creates whole scheme you will need to follow in following steps. So if this phase is done properly, it will make all the other work much easier. Okay, so I have the first layer done, and I need to think about another next step. And the next step is just to mix this previous color, whatever color you have, with a little bit of white. And this layer should be even thinner. So it's generally the rule: the higher you go with the highlighting, the thinner paint you use. But it has a lot of exceptions, so don't take this very seriously. But yeah, I want this color to be fairly brighter than the previous one and a little bit more diluted. So in this phase I will be definitely doing at least two layers as well, and I want to drive the contrast even higher. So I want to make this color, as I said before, fairly brighter. I'm saying it because it's very common issue. A lot of people want to do the highlighting or the layering with a lot of very similar layers, which is good thing to do when you're painting with regular brush and terrible thing to do when you are airbrushing. So don't be shy, add a lot of white and it will work very well for you if you use a lot of thinner as well. So my goal here is just to enhance the highlights I already have, and I will be doing that by spraying the same spots but trying to cover a little bit less space than before. But I want to really focus on the very edges. I won't be doing any more highlighting after that, so I want to get it right in this phase. That's why I need to stay focused and again spray very with like clear intention. Really, if you will be doing this by yourself, don't try just to spray the whole model at once and or even the whole section at once. You need to really focus on the very edges and certain spots. You don't want to undo the work you did in the previous phase. But other than that, there is not much more nuance to it, so you just need to be careful. You'll need to aim your airbrush right and just be patient. Another detail you probably will notice is that when you are using the mix of white and your main color, you're losing a little bit of the color saturation. So if it bothers you, I will show one additional step when you can get back a little bit of that color saturation. But if it's the effect you are aiming for, I honestly think after this second layer you can call it done. I add 2 additional steps just to address a few possible mistakes or maybe this color saturation effect, but you can easily do it in 2 steps and call it done. The main phase is the main green color is the most time consuming. It takes like half an hour. Highlighting it's pretty easier and faster to do. So yeah, that's pretty much the bulk of the work. These two phases I already showed you. Okay, so I don't have much more to say about the highlighting process, so I just leave you with this nice royalty-free music as a background, and you can see how it's done on the video. And I will come back for the next 2 phases. I just don't want to cut too much of the footage because you may find some details valuable, but I think I explained the process pretty well. So yeah, see you in a few minutes. Okay, so bright green layer is done, and now I need to take a step back and use this mix that I did for the first layer. So I'm calling this step the green midtone because it's between this dark base layer and between the final bright green layer, but essentially it's this base mix I did it at the very beginning. So yeah, I just need to use it as it was, but with a little bit of thinner. So I don't really need to cover a lot of space with this layer. I just need to change the shade of this color gradient I have on the model. So I'm aiming in between the darkest and the brightest spots, and I'm using fairly diluted paint, so this layer is also a little bit translucent. It helps to keep it modest and don't overdo it. I don't want to overdo it because I don't want to cover all the work I did with the few previous steps. I just want to add a little bit of the color saturation to the highlighting. And yeah, I don't need to be very precise. I want to just change the overall look of the model. So use your own judgment. Sometimes it helps a lot, sometimes not. It's really up to you to decide. Okay, and second additional step is to use black or almost black to cover your mistakes and maybe add a little bit of contrast to the model. It already has a lot of contrast in my opinion, but on some parts you can add black on the opposite side of this color gradient just to drive it a little bit further. So I'm aiming at the very bottom of the model and I'm trying to maybe cover some of my mistakes in some parts, but there is not a lot of them, so that's not really the point. The point is to increase this color gradient, color contrast I already have. So yeah, it's totally optional. If you feel like your model looks good, you don't really need to do this. So again, use your own judgment. It's really nice option to have, but just because you can do this, it doesn't mean you should always do this. So yeah, that's really up to you, and hopefully it will be helpful for you to know about it, but use it wisely. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I don't have much more tricks to show you, so I think we can call it done for today. I hope it will be very valuable skill to have, and this takes like under an hour to airbrush, and I think it's a lot of work done in very short time span. So you could easily decide that that's it for green armor and just paint all the other details, or if you feel like it, you can use regular brush to improve upon this very nice green base. So you can do something like edge highlights, you can add battle damages, you can do a lot of stuff. This is how it looks at the end for me. So I did mostly edge highlighting on the Dreadnought, and obviously all the other parts, but for the green armor is mostly a little bit of black lining and edge highlighting. So yeah, I hope you will show me your effects with this technique. You can always send them to me and I will be very happy to see them. And that's my tank, that's my repulsor, and I still have a lot of work to do on it, but this is very good starting point. Okay, so I'm going back to work, and I hope to see you in the next video. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach me, and cheers, see ya.